Dry sprinklers are used for the protection of areas that are subject to freezing. An internal piston prevents water flow into the freezing area until the sprinkler activates. Reliable has been producing sprinklers in the United States continuously since 1920 and added dry sprinklers to our line in the 1940s. Just like in the 40s, each Reliable dry sprinkler is designed, assembled, and tested in the USA. Reliable offers a comprehensive range of dry sprinklers for commercial and residential applications. Using a combination of automation and hand assembly, tens of thousands of Reliable dry sprinklers are made to order each month. Dry sprinklers are often the final product required to complete a construction project, so we understand that packing, tagging, and fast delivery times are critical. Reliable quality meets reliable speed, made in days, not weeks. And that is why we're reliable.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. We are here with Cary Webber from Reliable. Cary is a technical, give me your exact title here. You're the
Director of Technical Resource Application.
Smarter guy than me at Reliable.
That's yet to be
not even a discussion. Anyways, Cary, before we
everybody brings their own talents to the mat there.
My talent is that I get to talk to some of the smartest people in the industry, and that it works out pretty good for me. Like, gives a lot of people a soapbox and lets me talk to, like I say, the smartest people in sprinkler, and I benefit from that more than anybody else that listens, attends, or does anything. So, thank you for number one. Thanks for Reliable's continued support of the podcast. We didn't talk about it a little bit earlier, but I'm assuming the clocks. You're aware of the clocks that got distributed for Christmas?
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised that John in marketing called me up one day and he goes, "Hey, I need your home address." And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to do
weird
this,
thing,
John. And I said, "What's coming my way?" And he said, "The coolest sprinkler nerd thing you've ever seen."
Stand by. I've actually got mine right here. So I'll grab it. Oh, dead air is great for the retaining everybody. So this is actually this is the Reliable gift this year, and it's awesome, and it's a working clock. I've got it all. It's actually working properly right now, but the 1926.
And what people don't realize is that's solid cast iron. It weighs about 40 pounds. Chris is just manhandling it with one hand like it's nothing. It's crazy.
I actually have one of these actually out in my garage right now.
That's where mine's going too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have an actual, the actual full size because it's bigger. The actual one's bigger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, heavier.
Yeah. And it's amazing how loud those things are when they go too, man. I put one on one of our valve trailers at one time on our alarm valve, and I did it specifically. It worked like a charm. I did it specifically when, you're trying to get the show kicked off and everybody's milling around chatting, and I would just reach up and just hit that test on the water motor gong. Let's just say it got everybody's attention pretty quick.
Yeah, a couple of people have to change their pants, I'm sure. That's awesome. That's a really good way of getting attention. I was looking, that should be a ringtone. Reliable should make the ringtone of a water motor gong for everybody. I guarantee you sprinkler guys all over the world would download that for their ringtone when the boss is calling a service call's coming in.
I'll get with John. I think that's an awesome idea. And I know I can't do it. I don't have that talent, but I'm sure our marketing folks do.
Man, if only we knew a guy that has a pretty good audio setup.
Right? There you go.
All right, it's a race. We're going to see who can do it first.
We just got to get that one in your garage piped, right?
That's it. I got all the technology. I can figure that out.
We'll hire somebody to get that done for you, Chris.
I don't want to have to help you guys assemble your stuffs again here. You better bring in the pros. Awesome. Okay, so like we were talking ahead of time, we're going to get distracted, and we've already gone down the rabbit hole. But getting back on topic, the whole reason that we're here is to talk a little bit about the Reliable Prepak systems that you guys have available now. Ease of installation, get into the technical stuff. You just recently did a presentation. It was hosted by you guys on your website. How did the presentation go?
Yeah, so really, really well. In fact, all of our, I mean, not to brag, but all of our webinars have been extremely successful. I was trying to hit a mark that I don't think is going to get a high water mark that's going to get beat for a while. The webinar before this that Brandon Telford did on rack sprinkler
Hmm.
systems, 655 attendees.
Wow. Live?
600 and yeah, live on the webinar,
Wow.
655. And I thought, I said, I'm gonna shoot for seven. And I didn't mean 700. I meant
Seven attendees.
seven.
Yeah.
Seven. So I think mine last week was in the mid twos, right? So, but I don't know, for whatever reason, people are starving for information. But no, it went really well. We like you and I were chatting before you started the recording here. It's tough to talk for an hour about these things. And so the way the webinar breaks down, and this can be found on our website and our YouTube channel as well. I'm not going to repeat the entire webinar, but um, to talk for an hour on these things is a little difficult. So I tried to lead in with about the first half of the presentation, just kind of reviewing for anybody that was either new to the trade, or maybe an engineer that's not fully versed on all the different types of systems. I just went through low pressure dry systems, different types of deluge release systems, different types of interlock systems, just to kind of build on what can we put in these cabinet systems. And then we obviously chatted about some of the advantages to companies. What is the value of these things? What do they get you? And we kind of went from there. And then, of course, at the end, because it was our presentation, we chatted a little bit about the features that we feel make ours, the premier product out there. And again, you and I talked a little bit. I try not to make it all about reliable, right? I know that everybody that's listening, may or may not be a reliable fan. Sometimes it just comes down to price versus features and things like that.
Yep.
So my goal with these webinars is always to give somebody something, right, that they can take away and improve themselves in this industry, whether they're buying our stuff or not. It's great if they do, but I just want people to be better stewards of the fire protection business.
Well, it makes like, yeah, that's 100%. That's what I'm all about, is making everybody that's involved in this trade and involved in this business better at what they do, because it is
Sure.
something that this is something you don't, like my grandfather used to say, don't half-ass this, right? This is not something to dip your toes into. You're either going to be into it or you're not,
Yeah,
right?
and the business for sure, right? And then if you start breaking the business down into, and again, these what we like to call it reliable special systems, right?
Yep.
What makes it special? Well, again, in my webinar, it was like, if it's not a wet system, to me, it's
Cut right here. So a little bit of technical difficulties. I've got Cary back here. You were saying right before it froze, if it's not a specialty system, and then you locked up.
yeah. Okay. So yeah. So where I was at with it, you had mentioned, we talked about being stewards of the industry. You're going
Yep.
to dip your toe in, go in all the way. I was going to say, even, when you start getting further into it, if you start looking at the type of systems that we're talking about, right? We talk about special systems, and where I left off was anything that's not a wet system to us, we consider special, right? It's just what makes it special. We're not doing it every day of the week.
Right.
Dry systems, you might say, well, they're kind of like, they're not that special, but, they do have some nuances that you have to pay attention to.
Mhm.
But again, what also makes them special is the rarity, right? So if you're doing deluge systems and pre-action systems, unless that's your bread and butter, you're not doing these every day of the week, right? So you learn a little bit about them doing your nice set and then your training and things like that, but you're not doing them every day. So when the time comes to do them, you can't just treat them like everything else and think
Right.
you're going to just walk right through them. So again, you can't just dip your toes into this. You've got to figure out how these things work, what makes them different, what's involved in making these, do their job. And that's really kind of where the beauty of the cabinet mounted systems like the Reliable Prepak kind of can come into play. Yeah, so that was kind of the lead into, Prepaks and cabinets.
Yeah, and like I mean, like you say, if you're not working on them every single day, identifying them is key. So knowing when you either open up the door to a pre-pack or open up the door to a sprinkler, a closet that has a sprinkler valve in it, being able to identify, is this a single interlocking pre-action? Is this a non-interlocking pre-action? What am I going to do that's going to set this thing off? And how do I um, not take that possibility out, but
Sure.
how do I mitigate how do I mitigate that the tripping the system when I don't want to, right?
Yeah. So, and along those lines, which all this happens like further after it's installed, right? One of the ways we hope that gets accomplished is, oh, let's have this great set of as-built on site, right?
Always.
We know they're there.
Yeah,
We
always.
know that the owner is fully versed in what that system does,
Yep.
right? And what it's connected to. Right? Is it connected to fire doors? Is
Yeah.
it recalling the elevators?
Yeah.
Is it shutting down computer systems? I mean, what is this thing doing? I can't imagine anything worse from like being an inspector, which I'm not, but I know a lot about it. Than, like you say, walking onto a job site and going, I have no idea what this is.
Yeah.
And worse than that is you get the cowboy, so to speak, that I know what this is, right? And if they don't, then that's where problems can
Right.
arise. So, I mean, kind of one of the nice things that you get with the cabinet systems is you kind of get a built-in understanding of what the system is,
Yeah.
right? It takes some of that away. It's not to say that it can't be done by a good design and a good field crew that labels things properly. But at the end of the day, you're turning this over to an owner who he's got other things to worry about, right? So once that kind of chain of custody of the information is lost and the guesswork starts taking over, that's
Yeah.
when problems arise.
And
Right?
shocking enough, it may not be the guy who installed it that's going to come back and service it in, if you're lucky, the first year,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, you would think, I mean, that most customers would make it a point to try and gather that inspection if they have an inspection company. Most of
Yep.
them do. Let's just face it, but some don't. They're
Sure.
just like, hey, I'm going to turn it over to somebody, and but I mean, that still doesn't remove you from the equation. If
That's
there's
right.
a problem down the road. In fact,
That's
it
right.
may make it worse for you. So again, that's something that individual business owners have to decide. Where do we want to go with that? But yeah, so go ahead, Chris.
So you've got a library of these pre-packs that are available from Reliable. Kind of starting at the top, you have obviously dry system is available in the pre-pack.
Yeah, so I would say I would look at it this way. Right now, the only thing that we don't put in a pre-pack is a wet system.
And that makes sense.
And yeah, I mean, it kind of does. But other than that, we basically, well, let's jump back just for a second.
Sure.
The reliable deluge valve, which is our latch and clapper DDX valve,
Yep.
much like everybody's. Again, I try to put out kind of general information there. These valves are the valve body is the valve body. How I trim this valve makes it a double interlock, single interlock, low
That's right.
pressure dry, etc. So reliable currently can take that valve body and build 11 or 12 different types of systems on it. Right. So what we like to call a convertible valve, and it makes perfect sense. And
Yep.
it's very good for the industry in that regard, because when you walk up to the valve, what we like to say is 3/4 of the valve is the same all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Once I understand what those 3/4 uh, uh, parts and pieces and trim do, that takes away a huge percentage of the guesswork. Now,
Right.
what I have to worry about, I have to worry about what's different. And that's the only thing that's different in these systems is how that valve releases. And so with our DDX valve, which is we have another valve that goes into a smaller pre-pack for very small systems, but that DDX valve goes from 2-inch all the way up through 8-inch. And yeah, we can build anything from low pressure dry, non-interlock, 3 types of double interlock, 3 types of deluge release, single interlock, et cetera, et cetera. So I've lost count. It's 12, 11 or 12 different types of systems that can go in there. And so, I mean, if we think about where these cabinets started, and I don't know this as a fact, but it seems to me the first time I became familiar with them was, let's say you've got your high rise in Seattle or New York or wherever it's at,
Yep.
and it's a tenant high rise that you shell systems, all the way up, and over the course of time, let's just say that the developer of that building leases out 5 floors to a law office. Okay, well, somewhere in that law office there is going to be a server room, right, where their digital assets are housed. That's changing a little bit now with the cloud and things like that. But where these kind of originated is you've got that space in there, typically in the middle of the floor, nowhere near a big enough pipe to put a riser,
Yep.
and also no place to kind of hide that riser, so to speak.
Yep.
And you and I would look at it and go, put it right out there in the middle. We love it. let's
Looks
let's
good.
look at that thing all day long. But that lawyer's office, they're kind of looking at it going, we can't have that sitting here. So this is just my perception that at some point it was like, we need to set a system out here, right? We want it in pretty close proximity to this room, maybe just outside the door, for instance. And how do we do that? And so that to me was kind of the advent of boxing these things up and making it a piece of equipment that fits into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We like to say that the Reliable kind of powder coated black kind of fits in with the, at least you might call it, the old school look of computer racks and things like that. So that was kind of where these things started coming into play, and that's still a very viable use for those. But you don't need an 8-inch deluge valve for a 12 sprinkler server room, right?
Yep.
So
That's
so
right.
that's why you like to see that flexibility of having anything from like that 2-inch through that 8-inch size, because there are times where you need 8-inch, right? And there's other times where that 2-inch will serve you just fine. So
Mm.
again, you take that cabinet and you essentially build it such that you have to supply water to it. You have to obviously connect from the top out into the system. You've got to get water out of it when it comes time to drain it, right? So there's still some challenges sometimes in getting water to it and getting water out. And then finally, you've got all that electrical work that, for these special systems has to be brought into that cabinet to make it do what it needs to do.
Yep.
So that whole process of putting that all together, so to speak, and a lot of that has to deal with that electrical coordination side. All of that is a challenge, right? And it's expensive to do, and it's really expensive if it's not done right. To find that out towards the end of the day. So what do the cabinets do for you? The cabinets, give you that ability that everything's brought to the floor. You drop it in, you make those connections again, water supply in, connection to the system, drain out, bring some detection into the release panel, bring some power to the compressor and the release panel as well. And it takes away a lot of that potential for error.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what these cabinets systems do for you.
So with now, again, I'm gonna squirrel, see something and I go for it there. You had mentioned the cabinets are like that nice black, the server kind of black.
Mhm.
With the obviously your marketing team does an excellent job around the holidays with selecting their advertisements and social media posts. Are those cabinets going to switch to the fire red as well?
No, the cap. Well, let's put it this way: the standard cabinet is black.
Sure.
Okay. You know that there's no NFPA requirement that it be any color in particular.
Yep.
And so what we like to say is, look, the standard one is black, but if you want fuchsia, we'll give you fuchsia, right? If you want safety yellow, we can give you safety yellow.
Yeah. If you do safety yellow though, that's where people are going to end up storing their paint. So don't go safety yellow on that.
So, I mean, the thing about it that I guess that I would put out there, and particularly for, I don't know how many engineers you get watching. I know the audience is hopefully growing every day still, but from an engineering standpoint, think about things like that, right? I mean, if you have a specification that says it has to be red, right, for instance, and ours is black, at least listen to the reasoning why it's black, right? Yep. And again, think about, is that really the hill that you want to die on, so to speak? Do you really care black versus red? If you do, if you really do, we'll paint it red for you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. We get the cabinets in, right? That cabinet comes in from a cabinet manufacturer. We don't paint those in the building.
Sure.
Right. We want to leave that to the professionals that do this every day. And we want to have obviously everyone wants to have a very nice finish on it. So again, color doesn't matter. I know what you're referring to, the recent change that you saw from the black valve to the red valve.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, what rabbit hole do we want to go down, Chris?
Hey, listen, we got time.
All right. We got
time.
let's talk about black versus red at Reliable.
Sure.
There was a reason for that. So many years ago, when we sold valves in the international market, a lot of those valves were sold with loose components. And so the valve itself, if it went to the UK, for instance, instead of having imperial NPT threads cut into it at the factory, they would be British standard pipe threads. Okay, those threads are a little bit different. And so what Reliable did for many years was, when that was the case, we would paint the valves red in the building to distinguish them from the black valves that were used domestically. It was a visual cue that red valve was going offshore, right? It was that whole thing about how do we distinguish this one from that one in a very clear way to avoid issues.
Yep.
Now what happened is, with the advent and the change to a pre-trimmed valve, right? An assembled valve that's got all the trim built on. Now what we're going to do is, we're not going to build two versions of that. We're going to build a valve that has NPT fittings and all of that, and at the drain and wherever the customer overseas needs to connect to, we'll let them make the transition if needed from British standard pipe to NPT. So now all of a sudden we're building the exact same two valves. One's black and one's red. And then we looked at it and we went, well, this is kind of silly. We have to change paint guns. We have to have two sets of SKUs, right? All of this. Yeah. So it was just kind of one of those things over the years. You just kind of look at it and you go, oh, this maybe makes sense to just go all red. People like red, right? It's a fire color. We know that.
Yep.
But again, this is just an internal, let's get more efficient at what we do. So that's the black and the red. And I love our marketing people to death, trust me. But I don't think the red change was like timed out to hit Valentine's. I think that was just maybe a little stroke of luck.
The marketing team took advantage of it.
They capitalized on it. They capitalized on it just like they should have. So it was brilliant when I saw it. I was like, dang, that was really good. That was almost like we thought about it, but
yeah, it was perfect. I tried giving my wife a red dry valve for Valentine's Day, and she loved it. It was the best thing she ever got.
Just don't give me a black one, man. Come on.
What's in this thing? It sounds expensive. It feels expensive. Oh, it's a dry valve.
Oh my gosh,
it's great. It's a dry valve.
So again, we've got this cabinet, right? That's out there. We know it's available. And I remember back in the day, people would say, "Well, what about this cabinet?" And we'd give them a price on it. It'd be like, "Oh my God, it's it's horrible. It's, I can build this thing for a quarter of the money, that type of stuff. And that happens with all new equipment,
100%.
right?
You get that in the industry. What they're not seeing is the costs, the outside costs that are associated. That sure, yeah, you might be able to build it and assemble it cheaper. Number one, are you going to get it in a nice, clean, assembled cabinet? No.
Right.
Right? You're going to be loose components. It's going to be, if it's not level, if it's not square, hopefully everybody in this industry is doing things square, level, and plumb. But, you run into where you take a cabinet, you slide it in place, you pipe the water supply, you pipe the drain, you pipe to the system, and
yeah. So yeah, you just mentioned it. It's like, I can do this. I can build this thing. If you're building it, you're standing behind it. Right. And that's the other part of this that has to be taken into account. Where are we using these systems? We're using them a lot of times in mission critical environments, right? We're using them in places where we talked about this early on. If there's a problem, it's going to be a big problem. So if you want to be the guy going and building these things yourself, knock yourself out. But just remember, you're standing behind these. So part of what I mentioned in the webinars, let us take on some of that liability, some of that responsibility. We've been building these things. If you watch the webinar at the end, you're going to see an assembler that's been building Prepaks. His job has been to build Prepaks for 19 years. Right? He and the crew of about 4 people in that area, which is expanding, fortunately. That's what they do every day.
Wow.
We have, we've got several hundred employees in that building that we cross-train to do different things, right? Because sit there and do that same thing every day, you got repetitive stress injuries and different things like that. So we cross-train these people to change at shift and break and things like that. But the pre-pack assemblers, right? You can't have just anybody doing this. Just the nature of these systems is the whole kind of the brunt of this discussion lends itself to making sure that these things are built 100% accurately and properly. And that group of people that builds these, if I go back to the factory a year from now, I'll probably see the same 4 people down there. Yeah. And that's, to me, is a really good feeling, knowing that those things are going out of there. And trust me, they're elaborate, right? You look at it from the outside and you go, oh, why does this thing cost X amount of dollars? But when you open it up and see how that is put together and obviously put together in a small confined space, it's got to be built in a particular order. You're a fitter, this. It's like you don't want to build yourself into a hole and then go, oh, I have to disassemble all of this to get that in.
Yeah.
So they've learned, and that's the reason that they're the experts at this. This is the procedure that it goes in. And at the end of it, that thing is put through all its paces as though it were in service. And that's the beauty of it. So when that lands at the job site, assuming that it was properly specified, right? Which there's a 1,000 ways it could go wrong, right? There really is, but wrong voltage on a compressor and just different things like that. So it's not just you go to the book and pick a number, but assuming that it's specified correctly, we're going to guarantee you that it's built properly, it's tested properly, that when you set it on the job site, it's going to minimize that time that's needed to get you into service, right? And that's the obvious end result, right? Let's get this thing in service. Let's get it in service quick. Let's make sure it works. But there's a lot of stuff that has to come before that. So that's again kind of the beauty of these things.
So these guys that are assembling these packs, they're doing, obviously it's not one guy's doing the drives, one guy's doing the pre-actions, one guy's doing the deluge. How long does it take them to pump out one of these pre-packs?
So we put out, let's just say we put out, got to be a little bit careful here not to disclose too much.
Oh.
Let's just say we're easily capable of building a pre-pack a day, a working day. Okay.
Yep.
If not more. And
Sure.
again, that number, that kind of number of about one per working day going out of that factory is growing. Right. And so you're always looking for, okay, you know, we're going to sell more of these. We need more people. We can't have those same 4 people just, you know,
Right.
obviously improve their output by 50% or whatever
just
the need is.
sleeping at the factory at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's the other thing about these too. It can be a little difficult to manage, right? So let's just say that the number is a couple hundred a year, right?
Yeah.
Well, occasionally you'll get an order for 25.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may get an order for 100, depending on the needs of the job.
Yep.
And so if you go from several hundred and adding 100, that's a massive, like a one-time thing that you kind of have to be prepared for.
Yep.
And so it's a little difficult to manage. Obviously, they don't need all those 100 at once, so you kind of build it in. But you know that's kind of the nature of that business. I mean, don't get me wrong, we love to see those orders of 100. I mean, we would take those day in and day out, but
you love them for about 5 seconds, and then you're like, oh.
Now we got, what's the old thing? Like when you're estimating a job, you're always excited, right? Until the contract shows up, and then you go, dang, now I got to do this thing. So
awesome.
But yeah, so look like you had a question on your mind there.
I do. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the packs themselves and what they are, but let's get a little bit into the technical side. Just a very quick rundown on the different types of single interlock, non-interlock, double interlock, all of those kind of things. And then what makes them different between a deluge system and stuff like that. Just like I said, there is people, obviously this is going to be the part where the people that have been listening to the podcast for years and have a general understanding of how these systems work, but there are still people that their first week on the job that are coming around and may not be, you know, they may be in a high rise for the next 10 years and never see any specialty system like this before. So
yeah, sure, absolutely.
What are the differences? Why do you need so many different types of pre-action and deluge valves?
Okay. Well, I mean, let's just go back to just a couple basics here, right?
Yep.
Throw out wet systems. Everybody knows what they do. But if you look at a conventional dry system, like your run-of-the-mill, inexpensive, let's just say, I don't want to say cheap, but your least cost option for a dry system, your typical air over water valve that essentially what we do is we push the clapper down with a balloon of air pressure.
Yep.
Right. And to your point a little bit, every time you hear somebody explain things just a little differently, right, it hopefully starts sinking in. Right. But that's all we're doing, right? We're pushing that clapper down with a balloon of air pressure. Well, on a deluge system, I can't do that. Right. I can't push down on the clapper with air because I got open sprinklers and nozzles. So again, I like to think about like the history of how this evolved. There had to be now a valve that was built to be able to be held closed without a balloon of air pressure. And that valve is the deluge valve.
Yep.
Okay. That's why it's called the deluge valve. It's used originally and still used for deluge systems. So manufacturers came up with different ways of solving this problem, but we have a valve that's now held closed by something other than that. And so now, and what that is in almost all cases is hydraulic pressure from the manifold. Yep. Right? We take that hydraulic pressure, we use that to force the clapper closed and hold it closed. We then release that hydraulic pressure to get the valve to operate. And the difference between all these systems is how do I release the hydraulic pressure on the side chamber, at least on our valve, side chamber, Victaulic valve, rear chamber, Tyco valve or JCI valve, different, right? But the concepts are all the same. Hydraulic pressure, release it. How do I release it? Well, if I take that hydraulic pressure and run it out in small pipe with sprinklers on it or thermal detectors, it's a wet pilot line. Hey, we just simply just extend it out into our protected environment. If I'm in a non-conditioned space, or if the height of the system and the distance, because now we're talking hydraulics, if the height and the distance is too great, I can then, or if it's a non-conditioned space, I can then do a pneumatically pressurized line. We call that a dry pilot line. So basically, just again, an extension of the side chamber that's filled with air or nitrogen. We release that. We release the pneumatic pressure. It in turn releases the hydraulic pressure, trips our valve. And then finally, the kind of the one that we use mostly these days is a solenoid release.
Right.
Right. We take some electrical detection, we run it into a panel. The panel determines based on its programming, when do I open the solenoid? We open the solenoid, again, discharge the pressure. So, I mean, that's the three basics of a deluge valve. Now I've got this valve that I don't need that air pressure, but what if I close those sprinklers or discharge devices off and put some pressure in the pipe? I don't need to, but I can. And the reason that we do that is to supervise the integrity of the pipe, right? So we know that that piping is going to hold water when it's put into it, right? Because it's holding air every day of its life.
Yep.
So now I can take those same wet pilot, dry pilot electric, put those on what we call a single interlock. Okay. Discharge that hydraulic pressure, open the valve, fill the pipe with water. Why is it going to hold water? Because it's been holding air right up till that point. We know it has. We have a pressure switch on it.
Yep.
We fill that pipe with water and we're waiting for the sprinklers to operate. So all we've done at that point is we've converted our single interlock into a wet system. And that's the reality of it.
Yep.
We convert it into a wet pipe system, and then all double interlock. And this is again where people want to maybe overcomplicate things, but all a double interlock system does is it adds another step in there, and that step is the loss of air pressure in the piping. Right. So that loss of air pressure in the piping that causes it after detection to operate, it's no different than a dry pipe system. Right. So once the electrical detection has activated and we're now waiting for loss of air pressure, it's operating like a dry pipe system. So I just like to say that single interlocks are glorified wet pipe, right? Double interlocks are glorified dry pipe.
Yep.
All that's happening is you've stepped a detection system in front of the operation. And what that detection system does is it tells the building owner, basically, if I don't do something, I'm going to discharge water, right? I'm going to discharge water. I'm giving you this notice, and where the word pre-action comes from is I can pre-act rather than react, right? A wet system or dry system, sprinkler goes, you got water.
Yep.
Right. These interlock systems, you're going to get that early detection, and it's going to say, hey, if you don't do something, I'm going to dump water. And so now I'm going to pre-act rather than react. And that's really what it is. And then we get into non-interlocks and different things like that. But each of these systems kind of have a place, right? That's the other part of it.
Yeah.
And that's really to that point, the person, if it's not specified by a fire protection engineer or government regulations or whatever you might want to look at, if you're trying to decide which system to use, you got to be smarter than the average bear here, right? Right. And that's kind of the reality of it. And that kind of leads into, I appreciate the reason that you asked that question, because you really got to understand at some point, if you're the guy determining that I'm going to put in an electric pneumatic double interlock, why am I doing that? Right? Is that the best thing? So is it overkill?
Yeah, the way I look at a double interlock and pre-action system is that you're going to put that in a spot where you do not want water to spill unless it's on fire. It's not I hit this, I'm getting water out of it. I did this, I'm getting water out of it. Anything like that. It's there's a fire, check twice. Yeah. I see smoke.
Yeah. So
fire,
the way
smoke and heat.
The way that we explain it, and if you've been around Reliable, myself in particular, but a lot of our guys, is there's one, and you just hit on it, but here's the way we phrase it. The reason that you use pre-action is to prevent the accidental release of water into the environment.
Yep.
And is that always necessary? And the answer is no, right? Because a lot of places aren't what we might consider water sensitive. Take your average parking garage, right? If a sprinkler goes off in there, let's say it goes off accidentally or intentionally, due to heat of a fire or whatever, you're gonna get some, nice black sprinkler water. It's gonna be followed by some clean water in a little bit. Don't get me wrong.
Right, yeah.
Right. But you're gonna put that on somebody's car, and maybe there's some issues there. But
Yep.
Compare that to let's say you're in a nuclear power facility control room, right? We want to make sure that space is protected, but what we don't want to have happen is a sprinkler to operate again before we're notified about it.
That's right.
And dump onto a bunch of computer equipment. Again, we talked about server rooms.
Yep.
Fine art museums are another place where we see a lot of pre-action being used.
Yep.
So again, it's all about that accidental release, and the thing about the interlock systems, as you mentioned, with the exception of non-interlock, right? So we got to be careful about that one.
Yes.
But the single interlocks and double interlocks, if everything's operating properly and you break a sprinkler or break a pipe, the only thing that happens is a low air pressure or nitrogen pressure alarm. And again, that's what that is. That's why we filled that pipe with air or nitrogen, to say, hey, it's holding or it's not holding, right? And so at that point, as long as detection hasn't activated, low air signal. If any owners are listening, don't silence it and walk away, please.
Right.
Make sure it's addressed immediately, and get the system back into business. So again, that's the thing. And we talked about those 11 or 12 different types of systems. If anybody's got any questions about, where should I use these, what's the advantage of one versus the other, that's kind of a different topic for a different day. But again, that's part of what our technical service group is here to help you with answers to those questions.
Yeah. And where do they find the information to get a hold of you guys at Tech Services?
It's pretty easy. It hasn't changed in however many years, but you can either email us at techserv, TECH-serv, SERV at reliablesprinkler.com, or you can call us at 1-800-557-2726. And an easier way to remember that is 1-800-55-RASCO. So again, that's what we're there for, is to help you with those kind of questions. What we don't like to see, and again, this all again leads back into the fact that, look, if you're a building owner and you're purchasing this piece of equipment, every one of these is custom made, right? I don't go pick one of these off the shelf and get it to the job site and you go, I wanted a type D rather than a type F. Can I swap these out? It doesn't quite work that way. Okay. So what we really don't want to see is that product getting to the field and it not being exactly what you need. So if there's any questions, let us help you with that. Right. And we really don't want to see that happen on an order of 100. So.
You don't mind if I send all these back, do you?
Well, and that's not to say that mistakes don't happen. Changes in specifications happen, misunderstandings, right? It could go all the way back to the fire protection engineer, right? Yep. And so the beauty of, again, these units is, I want to say they're custom made, and don't call us up afterward, that type of thing. Look, we've gone out to job sites. We've changed them from this type of system to that type of system. We've added release panels where people didn't think they wanted them. Turns out they did. So those things can be accommodated, but that's not obviously the most effective use of everybody's time.
Sure.
So
order it right the first time.
Yeah. So, so where we didn't get to is, right, we're your podcast, your primary audience, shall we say, maybe sprinkler fitters. I love that it's expanding all the time, and I hope designers are watching, because if they're not, they're fools not to take advantage of not just me, but all the guests that you have on talking about this stuff.
I'm going to clip that. That's going to be a clip. That's a social media clip right there.
So,
fools.
Fools. Listen to what your reliable technical service manager thinks of you.
That's right.
But no, I made this point a little bit in the webinar, which is, we look at this and we go, oh, this is going to save some labor on the job site, right? Yes, it is going to save you some labor on the job site. That labor is going to be, installing that thing, getting it all bolted together. The other part of the labor that a lot of people don't think about is I got to commission this thing. I got to make sure it works.
Yep.
Right. If I'm doing this kind of split up like we've historically done in the past, and some people still continue to do, I now have a fire alarm contractor who is doing this big building, and now he's got this little thing down here. He doesn't even know what he's doing, right? It's important to me as the sprinkler contractor, is less important to him. And so you get into these situations where you're fighting to get our work done,
Right.
trying to impress upon them how important it is. And so getting it done's one thing, getting it done right oftentimes is a whole nother issue. So all of that has to be brought together at the end of it. So what these cabinet mounted systems do is they take a lot of that away, right? So that end of the job and the initial installation, but even more than that, think about the way your sprinkler job goes, right? You have an opportunity presented by a contractor, architect, developer, whoever you're monitoring bid opportunities. As an estimator, right, I have to incorporate into my job all the costs that are involved with that project, right, and hopefully make some markup and some overhead and some profit on it. So when you get down into the nitty gritty of these special systems, if you're not looking at those cabinet units and you're just going to go, okay, I need to buy a deluge valve. Now I got to go buy a compressor, air maintenance device. I got to worry about the release control panel. Look at everything that's in those cabinets and think about the fact that as an estimator, I have to make sure every one of those components is covered.
Yep.
Okay. That's part number one. Part number two, I need to now convey that to my design staff.
That's right.
My design staff now needs to understand it, incorporate it into the project, and identify all of those components so they can be purchased. All I did before, I just estimated it. I had the easy job, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Now the designer's got to go, okay, I got to go buy this. I got to get this deluge valve. I got to get this compressor. I got to get all this stuff. So here now we have some time being spent and some potential error opportunities being injected. Let's say he does his job perfectly, right? Estimator did it perfectly. Designer did it perfectly. I now give that list to my purchasing agent, right? He now has to go to 12 or 15 different vendors and compile all of this equipment, right? And bring it in. And depending on what it is, maybe it's different purchase orders out to these vendors. I have to now have all of this timed to get into either into my shop or onto the job site, right?
At the same time.
Make all at the same time, right? And if one component's missing, it's like getting your pipe without your hangers, right?
That's right. Yep.
Like I'm at a standstill now. What do I do? So the purchasing agent, let's see, he does it all right. Now I got stuff coming from 12 or 15 vendors. Oh, I thought I had this, but now it's going to be late, right? Or whatever, all of this stuff. Let's say it's got to come into your shop because it's not ready to go to the job site.
Yep.
12 or 15 orders come in. Do 2 of them get lost? Do they get misplaced? Does somebody grab them on a service call because they're there and now they're not there anymore? So again, you've got this potential for this thing to start fracturing and breaking apart. And okay, so let's say it all gets into the shop properly. Now I got to get it out to the job site. So again, out it goes.
Yep.
If something gets left on the truck, there's another callback, right? So all of these things, we want to look at labor, and historically, right, when we talk labor in the sprinkler industry, it's field labor. Like that's the connotation.
Yeah.
But you've got your salespeople that got a job to do. You've got your designer, you've got your purchasing agent, you've got guys in the shop, right? All of that stuff is labor that, depending on how you operate your business. I mean, where I worked, we knew to a dime what that labor was for all of those disciplines. Mm-hmm. And that's the best way to do it. So again, if you just simply look, and this was kind of at the end of the day with the webinar, if you just look at this cabinet and go, oh, it's too expensive, right? It's just too expensive. you've got to look at the real cost of trying to get that. Take the cabinet off of it, right? Even if you want to just say, take the cabinet off. I mean, the cabinet's not a huge part of the cost. So if you look at everything else and think about the realities of getting that built your way versus our way or our
Yep.
competitor's way, that you've got to do it's not just a straight out of the box cost. It just isn't, and it never will be. And I think more and more people are understanding that.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. The other thing to keep in
Chris,
mind.
if you got me, you're froze on my screen again,
Oh,
dude.
you just froze. It even kicked me out that time.
Yeah, I could see you, but you weren't moving.
Oh, that's why.
So
Okay. I think that's what we'll do. We'll kind of wrap it up.
yeah.
We'll just kind of like we did just get disconnected, so I'm gonna start kind of like right here. So we just got cut off again, which I think is maybe the world's way of saying that's enough on dry valves for today. That's enough on pre-actions today. Me and you could talk about this stuff all day as well as everything else, but I mean, to get kicked out of a meeting I've never been kicked out of before, that's a natural. That's the way it works.
Well, look, let me just finish off where my thought was there.
Sure. Yeah.
If we'd have been having this conversation 8 or 10 years ago, I could have said, "Hey, Chris, man, we got the smallest, we've got the lightest, this, that, and the other thing." I don't want to say they're homogenized, but the competition's gotten, let's say, more fierce.
Yep.
So we're all going to have some advantages that people like and dislike. But at the end of the day, the purpose of having these doesn't change between ours and everyone else's. So don't rule these out, right? Just because you think that they cost a ton of money, right? That would be a mistake.
100%.
And I said, look, I said at the end of the webinar the other day, I said, look, if I'm a salesperson and my job is to build relationships with developers and architects and things like that, I'm going to constantly be offering them something else.
Yeah.
And they're not always looking for the cheapest thing, right? So what I would tell you is, look, you've got a builder or a developer that's like, yeah, I mean, is there anything we can do to make this more attractive or whatever? I mean, give them an option for these things.
Yep.
Right. I was a huge fan. I've said this before, maybe even on your show when I was selling. I was a huge fan of unsolicited alternates, either deductive or ad.
Yep.
Right. It's like, I know you didn't ask for this, but here's an ad for some Prepaks. Let me tell you here's a picture of one.
Yep.
You never know when somebody's going to look at that and go, man, that looks slick. I would like to have that. How much is that going to cost me? You might be surprised.
Yep.
And what are you doing? What are you doing not only for them, but for your company, right? I've just brought revenue into my company that's what my boss expects of me. Yep. So if you can find a way to do that, even as a designer, I mean, if you got designers listening, if you got circumstances where you're project managing and designing and you go, I don't think we got time to build this riser room. Right. I mean, if what can we do here? Yep. Well, how about a cabinet unit? I mean, let's take that X number of hours, whatever your estimating program tells you, and say, hey, let's just drop this thing and hook it up and go. Right. We'll do that at the end of the job and away we go. So that's the idea of it. It really is just about the convenience, right? Don't rule out the aesthetics, but it really kind of boils down to just simple convenience. I mean,
yeah.
Think about how
keep in mind with it is if you're, a lot of the fitters are going to come out and say like, well, taking away hours from the job, I'm not, these are taking pensionable hours, all that kind of thing. If this is where you think your value is assembling a pre-action valve, like you're 100% incorrect in what you think your value is as a fitter, an installer, service tech, whoever. The fact that, the other thing with flexible drops was the other thing that getting a lot of kickback with. Oh, think of the hours we're losing. Sprinklers are being installed in more and more buildings around the world every day. The codes are constantly changing to enforce sprinkler and need more sprinkler, need more sprinkler, need more sprinkler. If you think that turning pipe to the right, as in, cutting a drop is the skilled part of your trade, you're severely mistaken. And you need to understand that your value is knowing where that sprinkler goes, not how to connect it to the piece of pipe.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to think about our friendly competitors, Victaulic, and of course everybody's got them now. Groove couplings. I mean, think about what these are arguments are no different. Flexible drops, grooved couplings.
Yep.
Things like that again, it's very easy to look at it and go, well, again, I'm not going to get into the labor debate of it, but it's taking work away from me. I'd say the reality is the value that's coming out of that is getting more buildings sprinklered.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, and so at that point, then is it really taking labor away or is it adding labor?
That's right.
Right. And so again, those are kind of introspective things that as a field guy, which I'm not, but you would have to kind of think about that and go, to your point, where is my value here? And then the other side of that, I would say also is, look, you work for someone. I work for people who are much smarter than me. And so at some point, if they say this is what we're going to do, right, then that's what I need to do. Right. Yep. We both know that sometimes our job is to do what we're told. Right. And so quite often that's the case.
Unfortunately, that is true.
Especially when you're married. Right. So
my wife doesn't listen to the podcast, so we're 100%. Yeah.
Anyway, so again, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk. I always have a great time, and what you're doing, I can't tell you how much it's appreciated throughout the industry. And now you got some competition out there. I know you kind of don't look at them quite that way.
I love it.
I do too, and it's great where this industry has gone in the last. Gosh, how long have you been doing this now?
I'm gonna go. This is my 7th year I'm going on.
7th year.
I started this in February of 2018, and actually, I know the date because it popped up on my Facebook memories the other day, and it was February 12th, 2018 was when I made the post on Facebook saying, if I started a podcast on sprinkler, would anybody listen? And I had 100 people like that post and say, yeah, you 100% should do it. You should. Why is nobody doing it now? So I started it, and it's gotten me around the world talking sprinkler. It's silly.
I was going to say that seemed like it was, and you're confirming what I thought, because I remember at one of the trade shows, it was probably maybe in the spring of 2018 or the summer of 2018. FJ4 had just come on board with us. And he's walking around going, hey, this podcast guy wants to talk to somebody. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And
I got that a lot.
Yeah.
I still do.
It's just one of those things. And it's been good. I appreciate the number of times you've had me on. I kind of want to be like the Alec Baldwin of Saturday Night Live and be that guy that's been on 20 times, but
absolutely,
but maybe not. No. It's all
absolutely good. Listen, anybody that for the most part, I will say for the most part, because I am pretty strict with, it's not just a free for all. Anybody that wants to come on, I am critical of the people that I have on and who I invite. And I have turned down, I'm not going to say I've turned down 1,000 people to come on the podcast, but there are people that I'm like, it's not my, you don't fall within my criteria for, not that you're not skilled or anything, but some of the products that are requesting to come on, I just can't stand behind it. I don't agree with the product, so we're not going to talk about it. Right? I'm not going to put you out of my platform.
I think hopefully everyone respects that, including them.
Right? Yep. One guy didn't, and that's okay. Works for me. That's okay.
Tell me who that is afterward, would you? No, I'm kidding.
I'll go get it. They sent me one. It's sitting right over there.
No. I don't want to know. I just appreciate the opportunity you give Reliable to come on and talk about our stuff. And hey, I love talking about sprinklers. It's all I've ever done, man. So
that's it. And I appreciate Reliable's continued support of the podcast, and we'll have you again soon, and we'll see you at one of the many conferences that we'll both inevitably be at this year.
Sounds good, buddy. Awesome. I appreciate everything, man.
Cool.
Take care.